We're ready to go. Go.
I'll wait. Good. How are you? Good to see you. Yeah, yeah. 7 o'clock straight up. Yeah. Go time.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association quarterly meeting. I am your current president, Blue Raiders, and we have a big packed agenda tonight, so we'll get right on it, but I have a few quick announcements. You probably all found these flyers on your in your mailbox or on your door or somewhere, or you can pick them up out front. As many of you know, because you've watched the presentations over the last year and a half to 2 years of Dottie rolling out changes to our permit parking in Cherry Creek North. Annette Woodward, I think, who is still out front. She has been working with me and came out with more changes. We come back with cutting them back at our request on some things, but there are still too many what we see as problematic changes that will decrease the ability of the residents to enjoy the parking that frankly we understood we would have during the upzoning and the changes in Cherry Creek. We were promised as a part of that we would continue to have our parking permit program. Maybe promises to pay for it. But with changes and with more density, there are changes being implemented throughout the city. But we really believe that, and a lot of us say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But there are some changes that we are going to be seeing, but we think that they've gone too far and taken too much away from the permitted parking sections of the Cherry Creek North. So we're asking your help. We intend to go meet with the mayor and the head of Dottie. We'll continue to work with you and for you on this. So thank you for your participation. And for, I also wanted to say thank you to Councilwoman Sawyer's office. She printed these for us. She's hosting the tabulation of the results on the petition. So, and she's very, very much with the neighborhood on this particular issue. So we thank her as well. And a couple of other quick announcements. Many of you have signed up for Spring Fling at the Cherry Cricket, which is going to be Thursday, June 6th. I think there probably is still room. So that will be a lot of fun. And hopefully you got the newsletter in your mailboxes and have had the ability to go through that and see that all that we have to offer with some of the new offerings in the clubs and so on. You have thunder. It's been one of those days you go from air conditioning to heat, air conditioning. Welcome to springtime in the Rockies, huh? Okay, without further ado, we've got a couple of speakers tonight that will be very interesting for you. We're going to start with the Cherry Creek Arts Festival. Tara Brickell has been in charge of this for many years. I know it's a favorite of the neighborhood, and we welcome her to walk us through this year's event. And Tara, please take the stage. Please join me in welcoming you to that. Thank you.
Just 1 second.
Okay.
Just so that they can see it on
Okay.
way too technical for my liking.
Yeah, I am Tara Brickell. I'm the executive director of Cherry Arts, and we produce the Arts Festival. So I'm excited to tell you guys a little bit about it tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Fix it in a second.
First off, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me and also for your support over the past 33 years of hosting the Arts Festival in your neighborhood. We hope that we've been a good neighbor to you and that we can continue to do so. We'll just go through my presentation.
It's really annoying. I'm terribly sorry.
That's okay. We all have technical difficulties.
I just don't enjoy them. So,
Was anyone here at the first Cherry Creek Arts Festival? Yay! Oh my gosh. That took place back in 1991. Wow, that's amazing.
okay. They can see it, okay. You're good.
So I can start.
I'll do it.
Okay.
You ready?
Ask them who has art hanging here.
Yeah, how many of you have art hanging in your house? Oh, yay! That's wonderful. Okay, so I'm not sure if you know, but Cherry Arts is a nonprofit organization. And we believe that art is essential and also that we like to support arts education. So we're a mission-based organization. So we fulfill our mission through this annual event, providing access to art. And then we also serve Colorado schools throughout the year. We serve about 40,000 students with our global arts education programs.
Dang.
It's okay.
That one?
The dates, we hope you're saving the dates. It's July 5 through 7 this year. We will be setting up on July 4th. We've heard that that is a holiday, but we don't usually celebrate it because we always have the festival right around the 4th of July every year. So sometimes our dates vary through the year. This year we're July 5 through 7. So while you're celebrating our nation, we're going to be setting up the event and we hope that you can join us early on Friday morning. We have an accessibility hour that morning from 9 to 10, and then our hours are 10 to 8 on Friday and Saturday, and 10 to 6 on Sunday. We are a juried show, so we hire a panel of 5 jurors each year to jury the show. They're artists and art professionals. This year's jury came to join us in January. We spent 3 long days in the dark, and they go through all of our applications, they do rounds of jury, and they whittle it down to the final show. I'm not sure, okay. So our jurors for this year, you can see are Jamie Burke from the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, Barbara Lewis of Art Consulting, Robert Varela, and he is an artist from last year's show. He's a metalwork artist. And then we have Paige Whitcomb. She's also an artist from last year's show. She's a photography artist. And then we've got Betsy Youngquist, who's the gallery owner. So you can go to the next one. These are some of the results. They went through 1,942 applications. So it makes us one of the most competitive shows in the country. We're really proud of that. And we're also really proud of the fact that we get to bring you some of the best art in the nation with the show. So they selected 254 artists. We have 35 artists that are joining us from Colorado. We've got 3 international artists, 53 artists that are joining us for the first time, and 20 of those were first-time applicants to CCNF. So the rest of the artists have been here sometime in the past 33 years. Thank you. We also have an opening night celebration. This year, we're going to host it on July 3rd. We're not going to compete with the 4th of July. So you guys can join us if you'd like on that July 3rd from 5 to 9 p.m. We're bringing 45 artists into Detroit. They're going to be setting up, we're going to have live music, there's going to be pop-ups, surprise performances. It's a really fun open air evening celebration, and it's your first look at the artists. We also have our emerging artist program. This is something that we've been doing for the past 20 years. And this program is for artists with little to no experience exhibiting and selling their work. And it's really geared to give them an entrance into a career as an artist. So we provide them with a mentor. We provide workshops where they learn about the business of doing art, where they learn about how to market their artwork, how to price it, how to set up a booth, and then they show at the festival. And this year, to celebrate 20 years, we actually are doing a grant along with it. So each of these 5 artists receive a $5,000 unrestricted grant from us to kickstart their careers. These are some of the artists, and they're joining us from all over. This is our featured artist this year. So we're super excited about Mami Yamamoto. She is a local printmaker, and she's doing our poster this year. This is the poster image, and it's "We all listen to his blah, blah, blah," which could mean a lot of different things, but we love it and think it's very fun and vibrant and a really cool festival piece. It's not only going to be our commemorative artwork, but you'll find it on a lot of merchandise. We have some throw pillows or a scarf with on it, so you'll have to come and see it at the festival. Mami was born in Japan, and she has kind of an interesting background. One of my favorite stories of hers is that at one point she got a fish bone caught in her as she was eating, and she actually had to go and have it surgically removed. And she, being auspicious, wanted to find out what that meant. So she actually looked up the meaning, and that meant transformation. So that's when she went from being an antique dealer to pursuing a career in the arts. And she went to the Art Students League and started taking printmaking courses and hasn't looked back. So we're really excited to feature her work this year. This is the site layout this year. Some of you might have noticed last year that we didn't go on 3rd Avenue for the first time in the festival's history, but we really have had some public safety concerns as the district just continues to grow and grow, and not going on 3rd Avenue allows us to absolutely have no vehicles on site during the event. We had to walk some vehicles on in years past for some of the residents and some of the hotels that have popped up on site. So this allows hourly access for all of those, and it's been a good hybrid for us. So we'll be on 2nd Avenue, and it's kind of like a tree. It branches out on Steel Street. You know, we go up on St. Paul, Milwaukee. We're also on both sides of Fillmore. Our main stage is over there on 1st and Fillmore, and then we're on District 2nd to Clayton. This is a really fun opportunity. We're also hosting an art camp this year from June 21st to 24th. And we still have some slots available if you know any interested students, but we're hosting it with Pat Milbury, who's a pretty renowned local artist. You might have seen his work in his murals all around Denver with Love the City. But students will get a chance to work with Pat for the week. They're going to learn printmaking. They'll do some painting, and they'll also create a large-scale sculpture that's made with recycled materials. So this sculpture will then be featured at the event and also in our mobile education programs. So it's a really cool opportunity for students. This is one of my favorite programs that we have. It's the Student Art Line program. And this is a program where 24 schools from around Colorado come to the event. They actually work with their school prior to the event to determine what type of art should we buy, you know, where should we display it, what are the that our school is interested in, and then they bring student representatives down to the festival, and they get to purchase artwork that becomes a permanent installation at their school. So since its inception, 427 schools have put 1,190 pieces of art in schools around Colorado. And if you're at the festival on July 5th, come to Room and Board parking lot at 2 p.m. because that's when the students do their presentations about why they purchased what they purchased, and there might be tears sometimes about how incredible it is to hear what moves them and what's important to their school community. It's a really great experience. And so you guys probably know if you've been to the event, there's really something for everyone. And you know, we have the main stage with music all weekend long. We've got Creation Station with interactive family activities. We have Culinary Avenue. We've got lots of cultural pop-up performances this year that'll pop up throughout the site. But of course, the stars of our show are the artists. They're coming from all over the country. And as I mentioned with the jury, there is a different jury every single year. So we hope that gives sort of a new look to the show year to year. We kind of always notice a theme that pops up. But we also have opportunities like the opening night, and we have volunteer opportunities as well. If anybody is interested, you can go to our website at cherryarts.org. But we hope you guys can join us on July 5 through 7. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, so we will see you all at the festival. I'm now curious, because I was up front, I didn't see, how many people have arts festival art hanging in their homes? We see that again. That is remarkable. How many have a Denny Dent? Oh, yes. The oldies but goodies. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're really excited about it. Always happy to welcome the festival and the energy that it brings to our neighborhood. We are going to move on now to our sort of featured presentation for the evening. And that is our very detailed update on the Cherry Creek West project. This is one you've seen before. We have had East-West Partners, the developer, bring this presentation to us in its very early stages. This process has gone through what they call at Denver Planning a large development review process. That is lengthy, it is detailed, it's where the city gets to say, oh yeah, no, you can't do that, you have to do this. And I think that's why it has taken so long for this project to coalesce and for East-West Partners to come back to us with now the details and their projected timing for this particular project. So please join me in welcoming the director of East-West Partners, Amy Cara. You've seen her before, let's welcome her back.
Okay, great. So yes, hi, everyone. Many of you maybe were here last time. Again, my name is Cara. I head up our Denver office for East-West Partners. Been here for 25 years, in a couple of months, so a long time with us here. I also have Jenny Jacobs back here. The second row back here, she is our director of development that's going to be leading on Cherry Creek West. So as Lou mentioned, it's been a long road. We kicked this off with the city in October of 2021. And even before that, we were working with Taubman and the Buell Foundation. So as a reminder, I'm not in this presentation, I don't go all the way back to it because there's an assumption, I think, that you know, but this is the corner of First University, basically where Bed Bath & Beyond and Elways and all of those things are. So the Buell Foundation owns that property, and Taubman has been leasing that in a venture since that time. So as soon as we get this rezoned and entitled, we will take that over from Taubman. So this is a little teaser of a image I'm going to share more on later. But
You want to do it? Want me to do it?
I can do it if make sure that I got this going the right way. Oh, yeah, works. Awesome. So quickly, I like to give people a sense of the overall program. So it is a 12.86 acre site. That makes it sound really big and sort of hard to get your arms around, but what that really is 4 city blocks on which we will be putting 7 buildings. So contextually, when you think about a Cherry Creek North block, we are really sort of turning that on its head and doing that a little less densely in that way. 4 of those buildings will be residential, 3 of them will be office, and all of them will have ground floor residential and retail at the bases of all of them. But importantly, there's a substantial amount of open space. So you can see that on this plan here, 4 acres. Now that is much more than the city would require. But if there's one big thing that we noticed when we looked at Cherry Creek, we said that there really is not a lot of open space here. And so if we can create what we're calling the neighborhood's new front yard, then everyone can have this nice place that they can enjoy. And this really is arranged around this idea of connecting the neighborhood to the creek and really improving the connection across First Avenue, which I'll talk more about here. So that's generally the arrangement of all of this. The majority, if not all, of the parking will be below grade. So that will be down underneath in one shared reservoir of parking, so that there's ample parking for all the different kinds of uses, and it can be simple, intuitive, and easy to understand. It will be completed in 2 phases, which I will also talk about here in a little bit. But one of the key elements of developing when you create a community all at once like this, and you have office and you have residential in one place, this combined with what exists here today in these communities means that people who live here can work here and people who work here can live here. And that will be further amplified by the affordable housing that I'll also talk about here. So I alluded to the fact, and for those of you who saw me present before, you already know this, but really when we started our planning process, way back with Tubman and Buell, before we started talking with the city, what we said is, what's the most important thing that this site can do? And if you look at where our site is, you can see that the shopping center itself is a big barrier between the community and the creek. And similarly, the country club also really encompasses the creek in that location. So for those, for everyone else, this community will really create a great connection to the creek. We'll make some improvements to the creek as well, and then also connect across First Avenue. So all of the arrangement of the buildings was done with that in mind. Once we identified that idea. This really shows that a little bit better, that idea of this meaningful open space. You can see that not only is there the main open space area that was shown on that site plan, but we have the area that we call the confluence, which really connects First and Clayton to a market square in the center where the farmers market can be in the future. Then there is the green area, but also between the other buildings, we have these other areas of open space, these courtyards. So there's this porosity, you can move between the buildings. And so unlike in Cherry Creek North, not that Cherry Creek North is bad, it certainly isn't, that's why we want to be here. But you have alleys between the buildings, and here instead you will have these open spaces, these paseos, or other spaces that you can walk through. So if you wanted to come in from the country club neighborhood, say, or from that corner, you could then walk between the 2 buildings on the upper left-hand corner, as an example. So being really thoughtful about that, and then making a lot of great connections down across Cherry Creek North Drive to the creek itself, and I'll talk about the improvements there as well. So again, roughly 4 city blocks, and I like to show this slide because it really puts in context the comparison to Cherry Creek North blocks. And you can see the density of buildings that occurs in Cherry Creek North, how many there are, how close together they are. Whereas here, there is a lot of space between those buildings. And that breathing room, really, we think is going to be something really additive to this community. Oh, shoot.
I'm not very tall. And I don't really get to laugh either, so I'm sure
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I am probably not the tallest person in the room either. I hate to say this, but I think the next one down also needs to be.
Now the next one. Yeah, that's. So you got to roll about it.
We need some tall volunteers. Okay, all right, one more. So you need me to go back one slide? We were just talking about how it started to rain so hard and now all of a sudden. Here comes the sun.
Here, for everybody, and for.
Wow, you didn't know that's what you were gonna do tonight.
Full service council.
Well, welcome. All right, so let's see, is this the button that is the?
Which do you want?
I
Laser
was gonna
pointer?
laser.
Oh, this is, that star
This
there.
guy,
Yeah.
oh, right here. Okay, so, do you guys need me to go back a slide? One slide. Okay, the open space, okay, great. So, yeah, and I forgot I had a laser pointer, so I can kind of point some of these things for you, but, oops, no, I just did that, all right. So this is what I was talking about, this area that we call the confluence. We'll connect First and Clayton, we're gonna do some improvements here, across First Avenue, which I'll talk about. Then the confluence, which I'll share a rendering of Market Square, which will be the new place for the farmer's market. And then the green, which would be our big open space. We'll have connections for pedestrians down onto the creek path, in multiple locations down here. And then these paseos or sort of mid-block crossings, which what I would say is sort of an improved idea of an alley, if that makes any sense. So these buildings are four-sided, and that means you can move around them, which will be, I think, a really nice feature for this neighborhood. And it really will extend this idea of the porosity that we're creating from the creek up to First Avenue, really through. So you can go one of the primary paths, or you can find a path, which I think is hopefully gonna be really great. And then this is the slide I was sharing that talks about how this compares to Cherry Creek North. So you can see that our 4 blocks there really compare in context to the blocks that are between First and Second in roughly in size, right? But as I was mentioning, the buildings are much closer together, both adjacent to one another in Cherry Creek North, as well as the alley distance from that open space that I just showed you between the buildings. So very close together here, whereas we have much more open space between our buildings in that. And you can see that by the little, the white shapes down here as compared to up here in Cherry Creek North. So here is a slide that really then breaks down how we're using the land area. 41% of the buildable area, as I've alluded to, is dedicated to open space. So space between the buildings, as well as the market square, the confluence, and the main green area that we have. So we get there by essentially, so we're clear, we are not dedicating any streets. So what we are going to do is create additional improvements along First Avenue, along University, along Clayton, and I'll outline each of those, and then Cherry Creek North Drive, as well as creating some private streets through the center of our site. So once you subtract those out, that gets you down to 9-ish acres. You take out the building areas, which is about 5 acres, 5.4, and that gets you to the 3.8 acres of open space. I think that's important to reference because most of the time when you talk about a new development like this, someone is building essentially lot line to lot line, and we are really leaving the majority of the site unbuilt. Actually, I should just quickly address the heights of our buildings. So I'm going to speak a little bit to our zoning here, but this is based in the Cherry Creek area plan. So as you know, that was all done in 2013-ish, 2013, 12, 13. And so, then there's Greenway plan, like, get all those dates. So, and all of that density was determined, right? This was determined to be CCN 12 as a goal. This site was not rezoned at that time because Tubman and Buell weren't sure what they wanted to do with the site at that date. So that's why we're here doing that now, as opposed to this being something that occurred back at that time. So when we were thinking about what we wanted to do here, as I mentioned, we thought about really connecting people to the creek. We talked about meaningful open space, but then we also thought we should be really basing this in the city's planning and the community's planning. So essentially saying, if the community through Brent Denver and the Cherokee area plan had said this was what they were looking for, let's do that. But as you can see, our buildings are not all 12 stories spread across like peanut butter. We've got some variety that we're introducing into this to bring a lot more light down to the street, a lot more airiness, and a lot more of a sense that this community is going to get created over time, which it certainly will, but it is still one community. So this then reflects, if you were standing at the corner of First and Clayton, and you were looking down that confluence, that diagonal paseo, this is essentially what that would look like at grade. The idea is that we want to have some sort of a fountain or a water feature right here at the edge that starts to suggest the creek beyond, so you know what you're heading towards. And then you can see also the beginning of the market pavilion and the market square that is beyond that. I also wanted to tease in another little image that we've been creating. This gives you a little bit sense of a better sense of what that paseo looks like from above. Not that we're going to be birds up in the sky, but I think it is also important to show what we're going to be doing in the additional amounts, the setbacks that we're going to have from First Avenue and from Clayton. So leaving all of the existing lanes of traffic that exist on First Avenue, we will be adding a two-way cycle track along First Avenue, as well as an extensive tree and planting lawn, and then a wide pedestrian area as well. I'll show that to you in a section later. But then down Clayton, something similar. So there will be a pedestrian area to walk, trees, two-way cycle track. This will connect Cherry Creek North to the Cherry Creek path. And then we have similar, even wider on University and great new improvements to Cherry Creek North Drive. So we wanted to really start showing that. This rendering has some work to be done. We haven't designed the buildings or anything like that yet, but this starts to give you a sense of what that's going to start to feel like, because the infrastructure certainly we have been moving forward with the city. So this is, as I mentioned, the First Avenue improvements. Again, not making any changes to the number of lanes that exist on First Avenue, but instead bringing this bike lane in a separated, grade-separated location onto our property. So if people want to continue through Cherry Creek North, they can do that here. Then there's the tree lawn. Then there is the pedestrian area, and a couple of images to kind of show you the character of that. So then another feature, this is an image that for any of you who've been watching these presentations for years now, this is an image we've been showing for a long time. This reflects the green, essentially standing at where Cherry Creek North Drive is, looking across that green at the buildings that are before you get to First Avenue. So you can see a sort of pavilion in the background, but a big open space that a lot of different things could happen, whether it's yoga classes or it's people just grabbing some lunch and setting down a blanket and have a picnic. Lots of different things can happen in what we like to think of as the neighborhood's new front yard. Then I sort of tease that this is standing on top of Nordstrom. But again, wanted to give another view. So imagine you are on top of Nordstrom looking to the west. This shows you the market square on the right and the green on the left. It reflects one of those central streets. And the key thing that I like to show about this one is we're creating this sort of shared street concept where when these are closed, this shows it this way, say it's a farmer's market or whatever, we'll have bollards that come up. Cars won't come through here and it will be pedestrian prioritized. It's got a curb that is curbless for the pedestrian and cars roll up and over. There are visual and tactile cues to make sure that nobody gets confused here. But the idea is that when we're having people moving through here, we want the pedestrian to feel most comfortable. And then there are other times that cars can move through, as that's appropriate. Here is an image of Market Square. Again, many of you have seen this one in the past. This is showing it in the closed to cars idea. Again, if the farmer's market was open here, or we were, and we have the streets closed, then you can see there's all sorts of people that are walking in essentially what would be street, but it feels much more like a big wide sidewalk. And this wide character that exists here, we're actually bringing down all the way towards the creek. So there's a big central sort of boardwalk that happens down the center of the site towards the creek. Cherry Creek North Drive is another area. So right now, as you know, it's essentially 4 lanes of concrete with no real relief, and then the creek path. So what we're going to be doing is introducing a grade sidewalk. Our buildings are reflected on the left-hand side of this. There's a great wide sidewalk there, again, plantings and trees. And then even within, between the lanes of cars, we're going to introduce trees and plantings additionally, so that we're essentially carrying the character of the creek up and through and across Cherry Creek North Drive, and making that experience really knit together for the community. Here's then how you would process a pedestrian in the center of the site. So what this one reflects is essentially right there at the connection to the green. There's a big wide, 20-foot wide area that is raised. So as a car, you would come across, roll up, and come back down the other side. It's pedestrian prioritized. So if a pedestrian is crossing, cars will stop there. This is because it's essentially one of the key access points to the shopping center, so it needs to still exist. But pedestrians moving through here in the community, being able to prioritize that is more important here. And then you can also see on the left-hand side, one of the access points into our parking garage. That will happen before you get to this. So the cars that would be coming into our residential buildings, for example, will not be interfering with this pedestrian area. We spent a lot of time focused on all of that. Then we're doing additional improvements to the Cherry Creek Trail. So I mentioned briefly the Greenway plan that was done in this neighborhood in 2014. A ton of effort went into that, and it covers much more than just the area adjacent to our site. It covers, all the way down to Colorado Boulevard and many more areas besides this. Well, our hope is by making some improvements to this, which is the most narrow area of the trail, that we can catalyze more happening with the city. So a lot of things are happening with the Platte River right now. When those things are completed, we've been talking with Parks and Rec about how can we then start energizing that kind of thing happening here on Cherry Creek. One of the first things that the city will need to do is an analysis of creek health. We've gotten into all sorts of geeky conversations about all of that, but they've got a lot of great ideas about what they want to do there. In the meantime, though, the big issue with this is that the path is very narrow, and you have high-speed commuters going 30 miles an hour on their bikes, and then you have slower people that are just out for a nice casual walk, all trying to use the same space. So we are widening the paved area as well as having a crusher fines area adjacent to that. It's very narrow here because of how far the creek drops down from here, but we have plenty of room to do that, as well as some lighting and some great connections through there. So all of that is work that we worked on with Parks. So this is probably a little bit more detail than you can maybe read from there, but there's essentially enough room for a two-way cycle track, as well as the pedestrian area, although people will be able to move more freely through there than just to those lanes. And then you can see there'll be 2 connections. One that is where, for any of you who cross over there right now, there's one that's sort of essentially at Clayton. That one will exist, only it will be wider for a two-way cycle track as well as the pedestrian connection. And then that central one, which is the 20-foot wide version that I was talking about earlier. And then, of course, over at University. This really shows you that Clayton Lane improvement. So again, a great wide pedestrian area, trees, two-way cycle track before you get to the cars. Again, the cars on Clayton here, Clayton is the private road. really just mall access and access to our development. But yet it still needs to have all of those lanes to get everybody out of the shopping center at Christmas time and otherwise. A couple of weekends ago when it was really rainy and cold, I think they kind of were maxing out those exits. But you can kind of see how that crossing happens on this slide. University Boulevard. So this is a parkway street. And so what that means is that it gets substantial additional improvements. So right now, I just walked some people across here, Jenny and I did last week. There's really no sidewalk at all, right? So there's plantings that the shopping center has put out there, but there's really no way to walk along there. That will change. There will be 2 rows of big trees. They'll be wonderful. And I've got some precedent images out here that you can kind of see. Riverfront Park and Commons Park are sort of a nice example where those trees have grown and gotten to be really great and shady. So 2 rows of those with additional plantings will buffer you between those cars and the pedestrian passageway along there. So that's going to feel really lovely as that comes together. Okay, so rezoning. I don't want to get into this too crazy, but just really quickly. From 2021, when we started, any site over 5 acres has to go through what's called the large development review process. It's really designed to make sure that all the departments are talking to one another. It did that. Admittedly, looking back, knowing what I know now, certainly the fact that our streets are private and any number of other things that we're doing that are a little bit complicated made it a little harder. But the 2 big things you have to do are an infrastructure master plan and zoning. So I'll talk about those here shortly. There's 4 city departments that are really the primaries that we talk to, and then a series of deliverables, again, that I'll also speak to. So our PUD is now, as of yesterday, filed with the city. So I'll pause here really quickly and say, as soon as we can get the approval from CPD to share this out with this group, with the zoning committee here, we will do that. Our application, the PUD document itself, and some of the background information that is essentially on these slides. A lot of these are really just pictures, so we'll add some narrative on that too, so that everybody can start looking at this and verify that it is consistent with everything that I have been up here talking about for the last 2.5 years. So we have it in draft form, and what this means, just quickly on process, is right now it is going through the city departments outside of the zoning group for any additional feedback. We're hoping that's relatively minor. They believe it's relatively minor because we're doing that infrastructure master plan alongside this. So that's another process that many of the other departments have weighed in on. And we have the development agreement, which I'll also talk about here a little bit, that they all are weighing in on. So again, if they are comfortable enough with it, we'll get it to you as soon as we can so that you can start taking a look. But again, it's important to note this is based on the CCN zoning. We had started with CMX 12 at a previous planning director's suggestion. We've come around to CCN 12. This community's done a ton of planning around all the details, all the fine details in zoning that relate to transparency and things like that, that really drive this. So why a PUD then? If we could just be CCN 12, why wouldn't we just do that? Well, it's because of those many unusual things that we're doing with our site. You would typically have build-to requirements. Well, what do you measure those to when you don't have public streets? That was probably one of our biggest things. So figuring out how to solve that issue, how to talk about mass reductions when you don't have streets. Those are essentially all the setbacks that happen up at higher levels. And again, how do we mirror what happens in CCN 12 with these sort of unusual conditions? We also don't have alleys, as I mentioned. We have these buildings that you can walk around on all sides. They will be great to experience from all sides. So how do we deliver on transparency and active use and all of those great things that Cherry Creek does so well? how do we deliver on that when we can't concentrate all of that on an alley? So those are some of the details, they're technical details, but that required us to do a PUD instead. So then also design. We initially were going to have our own sort of design review board set up. What we came to realize and think about was that this community very much trusts the design review board that you have here. So we are going to add ourselves into the design guidelines for Cherry Creek North with a new sub area, because we've got on, different, slightly different considerations with the private streets and so on. But essentially saying, you guys have got great guidelines, so let's use those. And so that DAB will do the reviews of these, and those guidelines, we haven't seen a first draft of, but we know that the city's been working on in earnest. So those are really kind of the key principles. The other component is our maximum height. So normally, this is another component, normally when you do affordable housing, you get the ability to add stories. And if you have 12-story zoning, that would mean we could go up to 16. We aren't proposing doing that. We're proposing 13, because that's what we've been talking about ever since we were here. And it also is below the Cran Review corridor, which we also think is important. Again, when you think about the things that the community's been counting on, you were referencing that as it related to another issue here earlier. That's something people have been counting on, is that Cran Review corridor. So we're going to stay below that. And 13, in some cases, we maybe could have gone higher, maybe could have gone 14. We're not doing that. So there's all sorts of stuff, detail that's in here. But it's all the form-based standards and everything that your zoning committee will take a look at. And it provides essentially a comprehensive way to look at us in the same way that you would look at any other building that's complying with zoning. So then the other big document that we've worked on several rounds of, and we can get you guys the copy of the latest one of that. I think it's the 4th version right now. So the 4th round of the infrastructure master plan. This is getting in really great shape. It really talks about the standards for the streets, all of those cycle tracks, the sidewalks, the widths of the tree lawns, all of those details, those sections I was showing you earlier are excerpts from that infrastructure master plan. It also provides our commitments related to open space. So while that is referenced in the PUD, you can also see the other significant things like that boulevard that goes down adjacent to the open space, and how all of that comes together. So those two documents can be considered together. Lots of detailed documents around utility work, how we're connecting, how we are basically disconnecting from the shopping center, and so on. And then transportation demand management. So that is sort of fancy terms for how you reduce your traffic impacts. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. I do want to note that typically would happen for any given building when you do the building itself. This community really needs to be thought of as a whole. And so as a result, we're doing that plan early. And we think that's going to provide a more comprehensive and a better positive impact on traffic. And then there is, of course, the technical nuance of separating ourselves from the shopping center. So speaking about that transportation demand or TDM plan, we've been talking with Stuart, who is the head of transportation solutions. He's your transportation manager for your community here, about what would be most impactful with him and with folks at the city about how we can best impact traffic. That combined with bringing our traffic consultants in day one on our early planning. They helped us think about things like, if we have streets that have parking on them, like you have here in Cherry Creek North, then people will circle looking for a parking space through First and University. Can you only imagine? We don't want to do that. So thinking about how we can put this together in a way that will minimize traffic. We have a variety of strategies up here. I won't read them all to you, but essentially what we're doing, you would normally have to commit to around 12%. We're committing to over 20% in our plan. And the majority of the significant ones are happening in phase 1. So that these reduction strategies will be happening in the first half. ahead of most of the development, which will be great. And then that will allow the city's process to catch up with some of the things that they're doing with Denver Moose Cherry Creek. So, there we go. So the other thing that I think is important to mention is just that this is a substantial transformation of what has essentially been a parking lot today to open space. And so you can really kind of see that in this diagram. So a few other kind of points on traffic. I won't dwell on this, but I do want to touch on it because I know that this community cares a lot about traffic, and you should. The First and University intersection and many of the others around this area are not operating at their best, right? And so it's something that has to be considered. But when you do have people living and working in the same community, that is called internal capture. That helps reduce traffic. Also, the fact that we are not building lot line to lot line, we're really bringing our buildings in, leaving a lot of this property unbuilt. That's helpful. The fact that we are not having our cars on the main thoroughfares and circling is also helpful. And then all of these other infrastructure improvements that we're making around the creek and so on, a bike parking facility, for example, that people not just in our development, but around this community can do. I know you used to have one up here in Cherry Creek North, having those, having that come to life here too. Those kinds of things that can help people make other choices. Not everyone will choose it with all of our cars, but some people will, and that's that makes a difference. Another sort of note is that the use, when Bed Bath & Beyond was here, that base use really meant that we had a lot of people coming, say, just for coffee filters, right? They were coming in just for one thing that they needed. When you have people just coming into run one errand, it generates a ton of traffic. So what we actually identified is that before Taubman started detenanting this site back in 2016. If you look at the traffic generated from this site as compared to what it will be, it was actually really potentially higher. So given that, it's certainly doing something new here in addition to the other benefits is of help. Again, I don't know that I need to go into a lot of this as far as the study and so on, but we did spend a lot of time on it. Really thought about all these different intersections as well as those to the south of us, because certainly those, since we were working on Denver Moose Cherry Creek at the same time with all of you, were areas that people were concerned about. The 12% affordable housing is also worth mentioning here. This is important. The level that we're developing the affordable housing to is a level that is consistent with what retail and restaurant workers here, not necessarily like a busboy per se, but a lot of the workers can afford to live here. And so if those folks can live here and work here, then that's fewer cars. That also means for the businesses in this neighborhood that are having a hard time keeping staff, that they will have more ability to keep those people. But certainly that impacts traffic. I mentioned the coordination with Denver Moose Cherry Creek, and then our shared paid parking garage certainly is a big component. We'll learn as we go. If there's anything we need to change in phase 2, again, to continue to work on this issue, we will. And then lastly, redevelopment takes time. We will get this first phase. It will take, I'll talk about the phasing and I'll talk about the timing, but this will take 5 years to develop this first phase. So we'll get that much done. It'll be 10 years before we get all of it done. And so by then, hopefully some of these improvements that we're going to see through Denver Moose Cherry Creek will have started to occur. So again, I know that there was a traffic study that was out there that some of you may or may not have seen. I reference this here to say, first, we recognize why it was done, and I applaud those who created it, because it's an issue, right? And in the absence of information from us and from the other developments in the area suggested that people wanted to know. It took us a lot longer to get approval on our mobility study to get it out there. But for those of you who saw it, the traffic generated by it, there were two different versions that I saw, is substantially less, 74 to 90% less than was in that study. So I just want you guys to know that that information is out there. If you guys want a copy of it, I mean, it's dense reading, but we are more than happy to share it with you. The development agreement is that other piece, and again, I think I'm going a little long here, but the affordable housing that we talked about, 12% will be at 60% of AMI, again, targeted towards those workers in the community here, as we thought about that. So that's 52,000 for a single person, 59 for a couple. And then we're also, there's a linkage fee that you pay into the Affordable Housing Fund when you are developing office. And so, and retail. And so we are going to pay twice that into that fee. That combined with the fact that because our affordable housing is going to be sprinkled within our development, it means too, that we're not going to be going after other affordable housing funds that other people that are going to develop single source affordable housing are going to use. So we're also giving back to the city in that way. And then we've got some equity things that we're doing around getting apprenticeship programs out there for construction workers. A big one that we learned early on from this community is that you need childcare. And so we're working on a study on trying to find out what exactly is needed and how to make that happen. And then a portion of our retail will be at below market rate to make sure that we really keep that great community character. And of course, the place for the farmers market. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that because this is a ground lease from the Buell Foundation, a portion of all of our rents go back to the Buell Foundation, and their early childhood education mission is supported by every year of development that we are doing here. So the phasing and that timeline, essentially the east side of the site is where we're going to start. And the reason for that is because that's where all of the major things that we're doing for the community are happening. So that connection across First and Clayton, where again, we're working with the folks across the street to really create a great connection for pedestrians and bikes across there, happens there. The Market Square, the green space, the connections to the creek, all of those improvements along the creek, all of that happens in phase one. We hope to be able to start our construction, really start utilities and things like that, maybe some of the asbestos work late this year, early next, but we won't really start digging a hole until the beginning of 2026 because we still have to design these buildings. The first building will be complete at the end of 28. We'll start phase two if all has gone well with that. Phase one will be complete in spring of 2029, and the whole will be done. This says spring of 2033, but maybe sometime around that. That's a long time from now for us to figure out. So, but we really want to deliver all of those key community elements in that first phase. So that is my presentation.
I'm going to check timing here, folks.
I'm sure there are questions. We'd like to get to some of those questions, but I did want to, first of all, thank Amy for this initial re-description of the project now with the specificity, which I think we can rely on at this point. I want to just clarify a couple things because she lives in the weeds, I live in the weeds a little bit, but PUD stands for Planned Unit Development. What that means is that it's a spot zoning type of zoning. So it's very specific. In any of the CMX, or as you all know, living in GRH3 and most of Cherokee North residential, everything can look a lot different than something that's right next door because you're in a general zone category. A PUD is very specific. So once this comes out and is approved as the zoning, this is what it will be. So even though the development can take place over a long period of time, a PUD gives us the assurance that it will develop as it is presented now, even though as time changes, there might be few things that can be done better, differently, more energy efficient, those kind of things, but basically. What you see here is what you will get with that kind of a planned unit development zoning, okay? Couple other points that I just wanted to clarify is that when the PUD process begins, there's a development agreement that is done with the city. And then as Amy pointed out, and I told her, I said, well, come on, Amy, we have a zoning committee, and those of you who have followed some of the things that we've done before, we as a neighborhood association will often ask the developer for some additional things, and we will enter into development agreements with those developers. The best example that you could see right now, if you went to our website, is the Gateway development. And that's First Avenue and Colorado Boulevard. The development agreements that we negotiated are very detailed. They are online. You can look at them. And they talk about what the area plan, that 2012 area plan talked about, which is when we get these major intersections into our neighborhood, there's a gateway. And when we talk about gateways, what do we mean by that? That means that the city envisioned, that we envision, and that the developers who are understanding what is in the area plan, understand that we want something that says you are now entering the Cherry Creek neighborhood. So if you look at that development, we are planning on having something. What does that mean? Well, that's for all of us to decide, because Cherry Creek is not just, and Cherry Creek North is not just the shopping area. It's us, it's the neighbors, it's the people who lived here and lived through a lot of this development, and who want to make sure that we still stand for this as being our home too. So what could that look like? If you look at that development agreement, the area that is the work shop for the lane, a lot of accidents have happened. So you can see that the turn lane is gone.
Well, just so you can see what that thing is, but that's where the gateway signage.
Yeah, so that on the one that you can look at online, you will see that if that turn lane goes away, which has been the site, and the city wants it to go away because it's a very dangerous condition. People drive south very, very fast on Colorado Boulevard. Light turns yellow, they go faster. And people coming out onto Colorado, going east, first and then south on Colorado, there have been a lot of accidents there, and maybe you have. But I'm talking about this other one.
Oh, the other one.
So what you can see there is that when they get rid of that wood shop, we want that land for our gateway. Think country club, as you go to the country club, planters, those things. We may not want that. We may want something that's very more Cherry Creek. And we will come back to the steering committee, the neighborhoods that all are a part of Cherry Creek. We are one part, but we're not the whole statistical neighborhood. And we will talk about what that looks like. What we've asked Amy to think about is on this other major corner, that we think about that gateway as well. So, and what I used to call it, we want the developer to light it and wet it. Give us water, give us electricity. We'll figure out, does that mean rotating sculptures? Does that mean something that we work on with the bid? Does that mean some plantings? But that is a future decision that will come back to us. But Amy has agreed, because we've talked about this before, that is something that we will have input on, that they will help us realize this idea that was a part of the Cherry Creek area plan. If you want to see what those development agreements look like on that particular point, look at the one on that is called Gateway Properties up on First in Colorado. On the website, you can look at it. You can look at even some of that little area the way we designed it. A couple of other things that we've asked in certain developers to consider, and that is uses. So Amy has talked about, and she didn't mention it, I hope it's okay to mention. So this particular side of the Brickell Foundation Taubman property is not going to have the soft goods that you're going to get when you go to the mall. So you'll have different kinds of retail. And if Amy is lucky, and I hope she is, we'll have some kind of childcare.
there and some restaurants and some other things, but that really won't be competing necessarily with the mall. But we can also say, well, what do we want to be sensitive about? And medical office is one that I've mentioned to her before to think about. You know, you're okay with that? Yeah. So we've asked them to consider, so we're already starting to negotiate this. To medical office uses, when you go to your doctor, what do? You drive in, you park, you go in for an hour, you leave. Back and forth, back and forth. How many doctors? Back and forth, back and forth. So we've asked them to consider in their office to exclude specifically medical office. Why? Brings the traffic, waiting. So one of the great things about working with great developers, like East West Partners, who's, you know, they did Riverfront Park, they did Union Station, they're respected, highly respected. And if you're gonna pick a developer, you're lucky to work with this developer because they do what they say they're going to do, and they're not afraid to put it in writing. So when Amy mentions that your zoning committee on the Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association will begin those conversations in earnest, we've already started them, or I wouldn't be talking about them. But that is what happens once they file for their rezoning. Now that process starts, and we think about all those other ways. We've already asked her to do something she's already done, which is the ordinance that says that the developers don't have to identify their transportation management plan until CO, which stands for certificate of occupancy. We asked them to do it at the beginning of the project. There's no ordinance on it. They said, okay. We asked them to use, when she referred to the DRB, the Design Review Board for Cherry Creek North. This is an amazing group of nerdy architects who look at every building that goes in, every design, and they get into the weeds. The zoning committee here, we attend a lot of those. They're online, you can watch them. And these architects will go into detail about, they don't like the type of the material that meets the sidewalk because it doesn't work with the type of the material on the 6th floor. Very detailed. We are lucky to have them because then we don't have to do it. Trained professionals will be doing it. Now, I'm not an architect, I just play one on TV. So I just want you all to know that this is the beginning of a process and that we will be continuing this conversation. Amy will be back. I think as the managing director for East West Partners, this is probably her legacy project because she's going to work on it for the rest of her life. Well, I'm not going. She's not going anywhere. So I think due to time, because we have another thing I'd like to raise with you, that maybe if we could ask you to submit questions. I know that many of you were over at the big presentation with the boards, you know, have an opportunity to actually speak with her team.
Oh, at the Container Store.
At the Container Store, and Jenny was there and a number of their other folks. So if you have questions, please put them in writing and send them to us, and we will try to collect those. And then we will try to make a really robust link of our website to their website, where I think actually we can probably get the traffic study. And
Yeah, the traffic study's not up yet. But yeah, and so as soon as we can get some of these documents, the PUD and so on, and actually today, I saw some people taking pictures up there of the renderings. A lot of the renderings are up there today too. But we'll get a lot of this stuff that we're talking about up there because we want everybody to have access to it. The whole idea of us coming here since 2021 was that we wanted us to have a conversation. So we're trying to be as transparent as we can. So all that stuff will get out there for you.
And then those of you who have insomnia issues, you can forget your melatonin. Just read this report. You will be right asleep, I promise you. Okay, so with that, let's thank Amy for coming and Jenny for coming. Thank you, very great presentation. And I didn't mention this at the beginning because I was not sure that they were going to be able to make it. But Councilwoman Sawyer is here, and Owen Brickell, who you've met before because he's presented and has helped us with this parking challenge. She is here to do a quick summary, and we are going to hand these guys.
They're out.
Linda is so efficient.
Yes.
I'm so glad she's gonna be our next president. But the results of the study have been compiled, and I'm gonna ask you to help me welcome our councilwoman and supporter and all things. And she will go over this study. So, Councilwoman Sawyer, let's give it up. Thank you very much. It's good to see everybody. It's been a while since I've been here, I feel like. It's great to see everyone. For those of you I don't know, I'm Amanda Sawyer. I represent Denver City Council District 5. So I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I want to leave time for Q&A. So I'm just gonna go kind of very quickly through our the handout that you just received. So raise your hand if you took the community survey earlier this year. Yes, all right, thank you. Over 1,000 people, 1,000 residents of Cherry Creek took our survey, which gives us very, very valuable data. And the purpose of our survey was to really hear more from you about what you want to see in Cherry Creek, right? We can all agree that the city of Denver kind of uses Cherry Creek and the rest of the neighborhoods in East Denver like an ATM machine, where we output a significant amount of tax dollars, but we don't get a ton of investment back. So what we wanted to know from our residents was, if we had more investment in our community, what would you like to see? And so the results are here, and happy to kind of go through them. I'm not going to go through them all. You can take a look at them and read them. They are also going to come out. They came out in our newsletter. If you're signed up for our newsletter, they were available last week. We sent our newsletter on the 15th of every month. And I'm happy to come back and have kind of a more in-depth conversation about some of these things. But just wanted to say thank you for taking the survey. Thank you for being active in our community, because my job is to represent your voice. And the best way for me to kind of aggregate information from residents to really hone in on the top issues that you care about and that you want to see improved in your community is through surveys like this. So thank you very much for that. I will not go through it all, and instead, I bet there are a lot of questions out there. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A, and we'll do just a few minutes of Q&A since I know we're kind of running out of time here. Questions for the councilwoman?
Hi, Amanda, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
This is a good presentation. As a resident here in Cherry Creek, I'm curious about the presentation tonight. There seems to be with the Bed Bath and Beyond.
So I'm going to stop you there and just let you know that rezonings are a quasi judicial process, which means that city council members sit as the board, like a judicial board. It's a legal process, so I can't speak about the rezoning at all. Sorry.
Well, one of the things I was wondering, and Amy, thank you for putting a presentation together. The amount of square footage that is.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you there. I can't.
Okay.
No. It's a legal issue. And now that they have filed their rezoning, I cannot discuss it at all until their rezoning is final.
Good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Anyway,
Sorry.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's very confusing, but you know, it's a quasi judicial process, and that means that if I were to talk about it at all, I would have to recuse myself from the vote, and I don't want to do that because you elected me to vote. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't be that clear. It's the law is very clear on that point, that once the council is no longer engaged once it's actually filed.
I looked at this briefly and it mentions traffic. I don't know if parking is mentioned in traffic. One thing, one of the biggest problems we have is construction traffic, construction parking. My guess is that when this east-west property goes in, and I agree, east-west is a good developer. This is a nice plan, it looks like. I'm gonna guess that 50 people from construction are gonna go park in the Whole Foods parking. And so I didn't hear anything about anywhere, anytime about construction people parking. They park up in our neighborhood. We have people coming up there at 6 in the morning. and a guy on a motorcycle transporting each one of them to the site at 6 a.m.
Yeah, we know.
And it's not mentioned anywhere.
So, yeah, so
that's
if
my
I
problem.
can-
That's my biggest problem.
Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. If I can just respond quickly, I will say a couple of things. Number one, the reason why we cannot talk about the Cherry Creek West rezoning now that it is filed is because if it does not, if it fails, they can't build anything. And so that is a decision for 13 council members to make when they come up in front of us. So I'm not gonna talk about construction parking with relation to Cherry Creek West. There are 16 other developments happening within the Cherry Creek area right now. So the construction parking issue is real, and we know about it. So I will say our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure has been working with the community since before I became council member. They have come up with a parking plan that hopes to address some of those issues. In my opinion, and the opinion of many of the residents of Cherry Creek, it actually does not address those issues. And so you have probably received a flyer on your door asking you to sign a petition. It is being offered through the Cherry Creek Neighborhood Association. It is being run by them. We have offered our support because we agree with the leadership of the Cherry Creek Neighborhood Association and the Cherry Creek neighbors, and we stand with you that Dottie's proposal is only going to make that problem worse, not better. So I acknowledge exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. Unfortunately, we are working with a city agency that does not understand the kinds of challenges that we live with in this neighborhood every single day. And so I apologize for that, and I tell you, we are working on it. If you have not signed that petition, please do. Yep.
Thank you so much for coming and listening to us. And I wanted to know, why does DOT have to change the parking situation that we have right now? I mean, obviously, I haven't talked to anybody in our community that agrees with it, and that's an imposition from them, but who came up with the idea and why do they want to change it, do you know?
Yeah, so the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure staff came up with the idea. They did that because they're doing it in several high parking need areas of the city, including Cherry Creek. And it's a terrible idea. I don't know why they did it. They don't have to do it. It's incredibly frustrating, and I will not stand here and make excuses for them because it's not okay what they are doing.
Right here.
Two questions. What impact has they've done their study, your study, will this have people coming to into the neighborhood over here? Have you taken that into consideration of how crowded it's gonna be? And the second question is it gonna enhance the people that live with this over there?
I'm not sure. I think you might be asking about Cherry Creek West again, and again, that's not something that I can discuss. Are you talking about Clayton, the Clayton Lane redevelopment? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So I think you're talking about, we have a lot of development. here.
Yeah, there's a lot of developments.
The things that are being developed in Cherry Creek North are uses by right, not rezone. So we can't talk about Cherry Creek West, but it just in terms of the development that's going on, to be talked about, I think.
Yeah, so, and I want to be really clear about that because this is something that's really confusing for a lot of residents, so no judgment here, but while it's come up, I want to talk about it a little bit. So there is zoning on every single property in the city of Denver, right? And you can go online to denvergov.org and you can put in your address and you can find out what the zoning is on your land. It is likely that the zoning on your land is not built out to its full potential. I'll give you a really good example of this. It's not in Cherry Creek, just so we can kind of keep it separate. Most of the land all the way along Colfax Avenue from Broadway all the way to Yosemite in the city of Denver is zoned for 3 stories, but only 1 story is built. So you look at those buildings now and there's 1 story there. And if a property owner wants to redevelop that property and go up to 3 stories, they can absolutely do that. That's what we call use by right. And use by right does not come through city council.
use by right goes directly to our community planning and development department for the planners and the staff within community planning and development to work with the developer to build within the rights they already have on that property. The difference with the Cherry Creek West rezoning is that it's not zoned right now for the way it is intended to be built out in the 2012 plan. That's why Cherry Creek West is going through a rezoning. They want to build more than they can build on their land right now because there's very old zoning on that land. That specifically only basically allows us to. So is that clear? Does that make sense? So I'm happy to talk through a number of the other developments that are being built in Cherry Creek. Those are not rezonings. Almost every rezoning that has come through in Cherry Creek, I have voted no against. Because I believe that we need to have a community benefit if we are going to be developing a property, and I did not see much community benefit in those properties. But in general, like for example, Clayton Lane, they are building within the rights they already have. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to just make 2 points and then sir, you'll be the next one. We only have we have less than 10 minutes before we have to be out of here. So, but I think we have time for a couple more questions. I want to make 2.7. One is, and Wayne brought this up when Wayne was in council, the city council adopted a requirement for developers to put parking plans in place when I talked about the transportation management. In addition to that, but at the beginning, when they go in for the permit, the developer has to say, here's where my people are going to park. Now, it is hard to find that. I have spent hours going and trying to find those kinds of details, but we should be able to get those details from the developers. And if people are having trouble with, and they know that somebody on a motorcycle is going to a particular site, we need to know about it.
Yes, please let us know that.
Because then we can do something about it, because we can pull that plan and go to the developer and say, you are not following your plan. And number two, close your ears. On the Cherry Creek West development, I said that Amy had committed to working with us on a development agreement as the neighborhood association. We will address parking in that document. And if you look at the one, right now, the best thing to do is to send me an email. Or we'll talk when we're walking our dogs together, but but what we need to know is enough detail so that we can, normally I would say if you've got a lot of these problems called 311, but they won't do that. So what we need to know is if you have sufficient information as a particular developer that is having this kind of a problem, you can call 311 and tell them nobody is policing this street and all these people are parking all day long and not watching. That's 311. But if you know that there is a repetitive problem with one of the developments, if you let me know or info@ccnneighbors.com, we will get it because Linda's on that. Doug helps facilitate who should respond to what, and we will try to get that, and then we will find those parking plans as Wayne pointed out.
Yeah. And also, for those of you who don't know, Owen, my senior aide, he's in the back in the white shirt. When you call our office, Owen is usually the one who answers, or when you email our office, Owen is usually the one who answers. So please always let us know as well.
Councilwoman, first of all, I want to say thank you for all the work that you do for us in Cherry Creek North and
You're welcome.
some of the other
My
constituents in
honor.
other neighborhoods. It's a pleasure sometimes watching you when I get a chance on the city council Zoom meetings. This particular issue is not just for our particular neighborhood. It's something that I first noticed that next door like a week ago.
Oh, God.
And,
Next door. Don't say that. Get off next door, everyone. It's horrible.
And then it became a conversation topic at a graduation party like that Sunday. So this is the police not tracking down on the expired temporary registrations. And then there are some people that are just driving around without any plates whatsoever. There's some, like I saw in the neighborhood, there was someone with, it's from, the registration from 2022. Obviously, if that person is driving illegally because insurance can't issue plates, can't insure someone if they don't have a current registration, and there's some accidents or whatever it is, maybe some of these construction workers, I don't know, like some other gentleman that maybe, I don't have a dog, so I can't walk in the neighborhood,
Sure you
check
can.
out plates,
You totally can.
No
You're
worries.
not lose, John.
but, no worries, I'm more than happy to. Is there any way to put pressure on on the other council people?
Yeah,
Pressure on the police in order for them to actually enforce the law, because these laws were put together on the books for a reason.
yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for asking it. I will say this connects directly to our budget conversation, right? So I have said, and if you watch council meetings, you probably heard me say this because I feel like a broken record at this point, but I've said to the mayor a number of times, you cannot reduce services to residents in a budget shortfall unless you are also addressing the revenue generation side. So, right, there's two ways to balance a budget, reducing expenses and adding to revenue. All we are doing is reducing expenses. We are not doing the enforcement things like enforcing DUIs, enforcing license plate infractions, enforcing, speeding, and all of those different kinds of things that are revenue generating for the city. We're not doing those things right now. And I don't think that it's fair to our residents to be reducing services if we are not also doing that on the other side. Now, I say that, and the first time you get a speeding ticket, you're gonna be so pissed at me. And I understand, okay, I get it, but it's true, right? We need to be discussing the revenue generation side as well. So I appreciate your comment, I agree with you, and I have been working very hard, like a broken record, to yap at everyone within the administration and the mayor and our budget management office and our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure and all the other different kinds of agencies to drive that point home, because I think that's right. Those laws are on the books for a reason. One of the things that we know based on the community surveys that we have sent out to our community over time is that you all feel like there's a sense of lawlessness right now in the city of Denver and that it's not okay. And that's right. And that lawlessness that you feel is easily managed and brings in revenue to the city. So I think that's exactly right. Thanks for bringing that up. And yes, we are having that conversation because I won't shut up.
We are almost out of time, so we're gonna do two more quick questions. Hopefully they're quick. Thank you very much. I just want to mention along with the parking thing for my husband and I that live on the corner of 3rd Avenue. When all of these projects are going on, 3rd Avenue is a truck superhighway. It has a 3,000 pound weight limit that is absolutely not enforced. I've got pictures of truck tracks coming up onto the sidewalk, almost running to our flower beds. It's a disaster, and we're braced for now the next 9 years of it getting worse and worse and worse. So beyond and all of the subs that, as first gets busier, they're cutting through all of our streets, but particularly 3rd, which have now become like the major cut through artery.
I know, I live on 3rd Street.
Oh, yeah, it's very concerning, and I just wanted to make the point.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything they can do to enforce those weight limits?
So, it's a question of where the development is, right? There might be there is an exception in the code for trucks that are going to a specific place. So if there is a duplex being built on 4th and Jackson, say, then they're gonna need to take 3rd in order to get to 4th and Jackson to deliver the gravel or the cement or whatever. So, and there's an exception for that in the code. So some of what you are seeing is allowed because of the location of where the development is happening. Some of it isn't, and unfortunately, there's kind of no way to tell the difference, but you are not the first resident to bring that up, and not in Cherry Creek, across the city of Denver. Lowry sees the same thing in District 5. So thank you for that feedback, and I agree with you. Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about it. But it is a conversation that is kind of happening right now, so thanks for bringing that up. Lou, I know we've got about 1 minute left.
Yeah,
What do
and I think this question was more about.
Amy, I don't need a new front yard. And I live across from James Manning Park and it's a beautiful front yard. So I don't like all of the trees that are thrown out. That's a real concern for all of us. Good deal.
Okay, with that, I think we're.
All right.
out of
Thank
time.
you for having me. I do know I'm happy to come back, so we talk to us anytime. Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you.